welcome. Today I'm going to be making a chocolate chip cookie recipe. And so if you want to just follow along with me, we'll follow a basic chocolate chip cookie recipe and I'll give you the ingredient list. What it starts with is 2 sticks of butter and you want to soften those up. I've already put this bowl with the butter in the microwave for 30 seconds. I just whipped that up on high speed to get it done real quick, nice and creamy. And one note about ingredients, you can use any kind of ingredients you prefer. There are a few items that I don't skimp on, and butter is one of them. I don't use margarine, I much prefer butter and the flavor of butter, and I prefer natural ingredients whenever possible. So that's just one of them. 2 others that I don't like to skimp on. I use pure vanilla extract instead of imitation. And once you've tasted the difference, it is hard to go back. The chocolate chips. Once I tried the chocolate chips that just have minimal ingredients. This one says cane sugar, unsweetened chocolate, and cocoa butter, and that's it. And once I tasted these, I just can't stand the taste of the ones with all the added random ingredients in them. But do what you can with your taste, and if you want, give different ingredients a try and see how they turn out, and see what your preferences are. So you might recognize this list of ingredients, but my method and my way of doing it is just my own way. So now I'm going to put salt in. I do always use sea salt. That's just what I have on hand at home. Put 1 teaspoon of that. Only thing I've noticed is since using the sea salt, if I try to switch back to regular table salt, it's too salty for me. So just keep that in mind. If you are using regular table salt and you feel like it's too salty, you might need to cut that back a little. Also 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of pure vanilla extract. If you want to get super fancy and you do vanilla beans, the substitution for that is 1 inch of scraped vanilla bean pod for every teaspoon of vanilla extract. So I've done that before in different recipes, and that's kind of fun. Now I'm going to put in the sugars. We've got white sugar and brown sugar. We're going to do 3/4 of a cup of each kind. Got my 1/4 cup measure. We're going to do that 3 times. We're going to level it off real well, nice and straight. Baking is a little bit more of a science, and you don't want to go too crazy with inaccurate measurements. Now for brown sugar, usually the standard measuring process is to pack it in, just like a sandcastle. So you just kind of pack it into the measuring cup, level it off. So that's usually what they're expecting when they write a recipe, when people write a recipe and they give you a brown sugar measurement. Okay. So now that these ingredients are in, I'm going to give it another mix. You can always start on a low level, especially if you have a bunch of dry ingredients or really, really liquid ingredients. And you don't want it to fly all over as soon as you turn on the mixer. And then you can always bump the speed up. And you can use a rubber scraper, you can use a spoon, you can use the beaters like I'm doing. Make sure you get all of that in there. We've still got more mixing left to go, so it's okay. But mine looks pretty incorporated. So I'm going to put in 2 eggs. I already cracked these just to save time. And I'll whip those up real quick. The one thing I pretty much always leave till last is the flour, because once you put the flour in, and you start mixing that, you're gonna work that gluten, and your baked good is gonna end up tough if you over mix it after that point. So I do most of my mixing before I put in the flour. The only ingredients left here are flour and chocolate chips. And I just get a little bit extra flour than what the recipe I'm using calls for, because otherwise they kind of run all over the place in the oven. I don't know why, but it's pretty consistent. So I use 2.5 cups of flour rather than 2 1/4. That's the half. And I'm going to scoop it in there, kind of make sure all the flour's in, and level it off. That's 1. And that's 2. Okay, so the recipe calls for 12 ounces of chocolate chips. These bags here used to come in 10-ounce sizes, and I thought, oh, that's good enough. But for some reason, like, you know, how everything gets cut due to inflation, now they're making them 9 ounces. So I just put this on a kitchen scale, and I'm gonna measure it 12 ounces. So. And don't forget, if you are using a kitchen scale like I am, put your bowl on top and make sure it says 0. It's all zeroed out on there, because you only want to measure the chocolate chips. You're not trying to measure the bowl and everything. Okay, so now that mine's at 0, I'm going to dump these in. It should say 9 ounces, because this is 9 ounces, and it does. And I'll add 3 more ounces to get it to 12. Now in my stores, this brand of chocolate chip, they really just sell the mini ones. They don't really sell full-size ones. And it works out just fine. If you want to get cute, you can do little small cookies instead of bigger cookies for the mini chocolate chips. Okay, so I'm definitely going to start this on a slow speed, because we got the flour on there. However, as soon as we can, we'll turn it up, because it's what I've heard is that it's better to do a higher speed for fewer minutes, for less time, than it is to do a low speed, because then you'll have to do more time for keeping it nice and soft and not overworking the gluten. I'm just kind of going down the sides of it at a high speed. I don't know if that's good for my mixer or not, but that's what I do. Otherwise, I get all this flour stuck to the bowl. I could try and work the like a rubber scraper around it, but it's pretty thick dough. So this just really kind of powers its way down in, and I like that. I'll pass it around through the middle. Make sure I got everything mixed in. I'm not going to see lots of dry flour spots. Got a clear bowl, you can even look. So I'm going to pop these out. And then I'm going to get my pan. Here's a pretty cool trick you could do. If you're going to bake these right away, a standard size pan, I normally do 3 this way and 4 this way. So 12 on each pan. However, if you would like to have a little freezer stash and just pull out whichever ones you want at a time and bake them and eat them nice and hot from the oven, I like to do that. So what I do is make a whole tray of these. And of course you can squish them as close together as you want without them touching too much. When you put them in the oven, you want them separated so that when they spread, because they will spread some, they won't run into each other in one big blob. But since this tray is going into the freezer, I can put them close. I just simply wouldn't scoop these and toss them into a bag or container, because then they're going to freeze all stuck together like that. These are going to freeze separately from each other on the tray. And then once they're frozen, you can pop them into a bag or a container, whatever you like. And then whenever you want a couple of cookies, or a lot of cookies, nice and hot from the oven, just pull them out. Throw them right on the pan, frozen, and into the oven. Another thing you can do that I wanted to tell you here is different flavors, because you know I like to play around with my recipes. So you can tweak this flavor a little bit. I do have a totally separate recipe for white chocolate chip cookies. So I don't need to tweak this recipe for that, because I have a whole nother recipe. But what I have done is added 1 teaspoon of ground cinnamon, to this dough. And then instead of the regular chocolate chips, I put white chocolate chips. So you've got cinnamon white chocolate chip cookies. Those are really good. Other than that, I don't think I've played around too much with this recipe. But I'm wondering what other things could work, especially with having tweaked my cake recipes to do different fruity flavors, because I know there's some cookies out there I've done before. You know, the fruit and cream variety oatmeal. they've done that with cookies. So like peaches and cream oatmeal cookies, or strawberries and cream oatmeal cookies, or whatever. Those are really good, but I don't really eat oats anymore because they give me a really bad heartburn, unfortunately. So I wonder if I could make like a different fruity cookie, oat free. And these scoops are pretty cool. If you have a scoop, go ahead and do that. And if you're just kind of using a couple of spoons, you can do that too. Just scoop with one spoon and scrape it off with the other spoon. And you can do these as big or as small as you want. And for this, it really doesn't matter whether you preheat your oven or not, from my perspective anyway. From what I do, sometimes I usually don't preheat it, and I just keep an eye on when it's done. And you might have noticed, you might have heard me say, I really don't time my baked goods. So if you're looking for like recommendation of like 5 minutes in the oven, maybe that'll be somewhere around the correct time. But what you really want to do is put your oven on 350 degrees and just watch it. If you want to take a peek at it after 5 minutes, you'll see. Just make sure you're checking the edges and they're not getting too brown, because usually that's what indicates that it's burning on the bottom. It's getting ready to burn on the bottom. And then you've got a little bit left in the bowl, and I feel obligated to tell you that you're not supposed to eat that. But there is a but. Maybe you won't know whether I follow that rule or not. There's a benefit to not using a scraper. That's extra involved. So I'll pop this into the freezer, and then later, when I want to bake some cookies, I just pull one out. Or, however many people are going to eat cookies, or if I'm going to sit there and binge on cookies. So that is following a simple cookie recipe with some ideas for different flavors of cookies. And let me know in the comments if you have any flavored ideas, cookie flavor ideas, or ways to tweak this recipe or other recipes, and what you would like to see next. Bye!